I'm different than you guys. You know, I'm a black gay man.
I'm a black gay man. Black gay man.
The only currency that really matters to the left, aside from those George Soros dollars, is of course your victimhood status, right? How oppressed you are determines how correct you are and how much your opinion should be heard. And we're kind of seeing this play out right now in all of these protests, so-called, on college campuses across America. Now, of course, what are we talking about? Well, Israel right now is shellacking Palestine, shellacking Hamas. And a lot of people are saying, well, they're being beaten so badly, so obviously they're the victims, they're the good guys, all right? Now, I've already made my feelings clear about this, so I'm not going to go into that again, but that's essentially what this boils down to. Because Palestine is seen as the victim in this clash, therefore we have to have all of these violent protests erupting on these college campuses. Now, what we're going to see today is a little exchange on Real Time with Bill Maher between Don Lemon and Scott Galloway. So let's go ahead and check this out.
The double standard here is pretty striking. Dylan Roof goes into a Charleston church and kills 9 members of a black church. If I went down to the plaza of any of these universities with a white hood, a Confederate flag, and signs and started saying, Dylan, globalize Dylan, kill black people.
Right.
There'd be no need for context. We wouldn't be talking about free speech. I'd be out of academia. And if I whipped up students into a frenzy such that we started harassing non-white students on their way to the library, and I started getting in their face or even throwing things at them, and that has happened, we wouldn't be having a conversation about the First Amendment. We'd call in the National Guard. What is clear to me is that free speech is at its freest when it's hate speech against Jews.
So that there is Scott Galloway. He is a big old leftist, but he makes a couple of interesting points. But all I really want to say is this, all right? Free speech should be pretty near absolute as you can get it. And I know a lot of people are like, well, what about hate speech? Well, hate speech isn't really a thing, because when you define something as hateful and you start to cancel it, now you can define anything as hateful and you can cancel it out. But what he's actually describing here is not free speech. What we're describing here isn't even protest. It's basically riots. When you have people coming out and pushing, hitting, throwing things at, breaking into buildings. This is no longer freedom of speech. This is no longer the right to peacefully protest and assemble. This is now officially riots and human endangerment. And yes, it should be broken up as soon as possible, but not because people deem it to be hateful, etc., because that's a slippery slope we definitely do not want to go down. So yes, he's drawing the right conclusion that we need to call in the National Guard to clear these people out, but not because of what they're saying, but because of what they're actually doing.
I'm not minimizing what's going on, but it teaches some of these students to deal with discomfort, right?
Yeah, that's good.
Right. I mean, it does, right?
But this
You mean
is
the tent, living in the tent?
Well, living in the tent, and also, listen, I'm different than you guys. You know, I'm a black gay man, so I live in uncomfortable spaces all the time, and I think that is a good lesson for college students. Again, I'm not saying
Why? What's going on?
Well, what do you mean? What's going on?
Well, you say uncomfortable spaces.
Well, it's uncomfortable. Everything. College is not a comfortable place. You learn.
No, but you say you live in these spaces.
Yeah, I live in these spaces.
Well, I mean, just tell me what.
Well, I'm often the only person of color in the room, especially in.
There's only 3 of us
spaces.
here.
Yeah.
Come on. Come on. Come on.
Now, if you listen to what Don Lemon started saying there in that segment, essentially he was saying this is actually a good growing experience for the people who are being harassed and hurt on these college campus protests, all right? It's going to teach them character. It's going to teach them to deal with these scenarios, okay? Yeah, you don't have to deal with assault. You don't have to deal with people threatening your life. You don't have to deal with people barring your way and not allowing you to enter a college that you are paying to go to. What this is going to do is possibly make you hateful of other people and groups, and of course make you afraid to go outside your home. But never mind any of that. So it's funny coming from Don Lemon, who's saying, it builds character. You got to learn how to handle that. And as a black gay man, I totally know what I'm talking about, because you have to go through these uncomfortable situations in order to grow. Don Lemon, you have not grown an iota, because all you talk about, of course, is the racial disparity. All you talk about is the white supremacist history of the country, all right? That's your MO. That's what you do. And if you, a man, an American citizen in this country who is wealthy, who is well known for good or for bad, can't get over it by this point in your life, what chance do these students on these college campuses that are being assaulted have? So yes, playing the race card gets old. And I love how Bill Maher is like, what are you talking about? There's only 3 of us up here. So 33% of the people on stage right now on Bill Maher's show are black and gay. I guess I don't know about the sexuality of Scott Galloway, so it could be 66%. But basically, yeah, that's well above the average.
Anyone who tells you to follow your passion is already rich.
This is true. That's true. It's good, right?
And the guy telling you to follow your passion made his billions in iron ore smelting.
Yeah.
This is your job. Your job is to find your talent and then develop mastery. And in an industry that has a 90+% employment rate, you want to be a model, an athlete, an actor. Just keep in mind, if you don't get bright signals from a very early stage that you're in the 0.1%, which Don is, find an industry that's boring, that you can develop mastery. You know what you're going to become passionate about? Making a shit ton of money so you can take care of your kids and your parents.
DEI is, look, there's some great things about DEI, but it's not all, roses. And I think we need to take a look at it, and we need to sort of do some rejiggering, because it's gone too far. It's become a religion.
It started fine. I mean, 60 years ago, there were 12 blacks at Princeton, Yale, and Harvard combined. Right. 51% of this year's freshman class at Harvard is non-white. That's a tremendous victory. The question is, where do we move from here? And the bottom line is, affirmative action is wonderful, but it shouldn't be based on visible characteristics. That causes more trouble than it solves right now. It's not needed. What we need is affirmative action. I'm not done yet. What we need is
burn him, heretic, monster.
What we need is affirmative action based on color, called green.
Right.
Poor kids deserve more help.
Right.
You would rather. This is a sign of victory in our nation. You would rather be born gay or non-white than poor. So let's help the poor kids out. Letting in the Indian daughter of a private equity billionaire isn't diversity.
So we went from a very positive message of, make work your passion and make your passion making money to be self-sufficient, to coming over here and saying, yeah, DEI, it's pretty good. It just kind of went off the rails a little bit, right? There's nothing wrong with judging people based on their skin color or orientations, just so we can put them into positions of power, authority, or even places in college, etc. There's no downside to that. Never mind, of course, the fact you had the principal of Harvard having to resign for plagiarism, because that's what happens when you just have the DEI hires. But then, of course, you have Scott Galloway chiming in as well, saying, well, it's a great victory to have these increased numbers at all of these colleges, etc., thanks to, the affirmative action initiatives and DEI and all that stuff. And I say, well, why is it a great victory? Okay, if you're just trying to put people in just to increase the numbers, that is not a great victory. All right, meritocracy should always be the order of the day. Letting people into schools or putting them into positions of power simply because of how they look doesn't really further the cause. And studies have shown, of course, that people who see all this stuff happening, the affirmative action, the DEI, it actually has a negative effect on perception. So it's not necessarily a good thing just to increase the numbers. But of course, what's also mentioned there is, the color green, right? The poor people need to have help. And I say, well, that's what scholarships are for. If you have the meritocracy, you have those smart people coming in and getting into Harvard, getting into Yale, getting into Princeton, that's a good thing. So you should have those scholarships readily available. But at the same time, there's nothing wrong with going to a local community college. Nothing wrong with that. And nothing is stopping poor people from doing that. All right. All we have to do, of course, is have the proper training and desire. So I don't really agree with much of what they're saying here, but I could be wrong. So as usual, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and stay safe out there, people, because they're coming after you.